did it. You're here. Hi.
Good to see your face again. How are you,
Yours too.
Abby?
I am well. How are you?
Good, good. I feel like um, it's been a long time coming, this recording, but also a long time since we've gotten to catch up and check in. And so I'm just so
It's
glad to be here with
true.
you.
Nothing like a
Yeah,
quick girlfriend check-in with the recorder on.
yeah, exactly. That's
But
right.
um, it's funny. You and I were actually initially, I think, introduced by the We Natal team,
Yes.
Ronit and
Yeah.
Vita. But then it felt like once we were introduced, there were all these intersections between us and different people. And you really represent for this podcast the single mother by choice community, which is a big, beautiful, robust,
Yeah.
meaningful community that doesn't often feel heard from. And so I'm just glad. Thank you for being here to represent you badass women.
Well, thank you for seeing us, I think, and for sharing the voices of all sorts of people going through infertility on your podcast. It's really an honor to share my story, at least. I don't know how representative it is because, like any community, we are diverse.
Sure.
And we have our diverse reasons for being solo moms by choice. But it's really an honor to be chatting with you about my experience.
Well, let's get into your experience and how you ended
Yeah.
up representing this community.
Yeah. Well, so I think um, my research on solo parenting goes deep through the bowels of Facebook and Facebook groups, right? Because that's where we find a lot of our support, and other solo moms by choice. And all of us come to it for different reasons. Some really just don't want partnership in any way, shape, or form. And for me, I never imagined that I would be unpartnered. I sort of had this image that partnership was the way to build family. And so I came to this choice by way of having a number of failed partnerships, and dating and just getting so exhausted in the dating scene and thinking, "Well, there has to be something more than this." Um, and so if I back up, I think what's been cool about the solo mom by choice world is that it used to be so taboo and it's increasingly become more visible and more seen and more of an option for people.
Mm.
And for me, that was true too, that I sort of had it in the back of my head as, okay, this is the backup option. This is something I could do. And I always kind of liked the feeling of that in my body. I was like, okay, this option could be a great fit for me. And the dating stuff was complicated and there was a lot of very near misses. Um, and the longer I went dating people that just were so not right and thinking this is the only way to have a family, the more that little voice in the back of my head that said, what if you just did it alone, got louder and louder and louder. And where it really came to fruition is a really nasty breakup I had around 35. And that's that point, right? That's where all the doctors tell you your fertility's fallen off a cliff. And if you
Right.
don't have babies right now, it is over for you. And I'm going, okay, the ring is not on my hand. We just broke up. I've been wasted 5 years of my life on this man. Um, and I fell apart. I just fell apart, dark night of the soul, dark year of the soul kind of thing. And it was in the rebuilding process, the picking myself up process, that the idea of being a solo mom by choice started to be real.
Tell me so the voices in your head, were you like, did that sort of help dig you out? Because you got excited or maybe empowered. I
Yeah.
don't want to put feelings into your mouth, but that you could do this by yourself and you didn't need that partnership. How did that help drive the process
Mm.
forward for you?
It's a really good question. I think the empowerment came very slowly in the way that um, women tend to age and step into their power over time. Um, But it was more like the first step was, okay, well, what if I just froze my eggs? And I did the egg freezing as a way of saying, okay, I am clear on the fact that I want kids and I will spend the time and money that I had saved up. Was very lucky to have money saved up for this. Um, to invest in something. And the thing I was telling myself at the time was, three. First, freezing my eggs will take the pressure off of any dating.
Mhm.
Second, if I do find my partner, what a gift that I have given this gentleman that I have saved these eggs so that we have a little bit more time to find each other, fall in love, and build our family together. And then finally, there was I guess if that doesn't happen, I could use them myself. So that was my first empowering step. And I remember the first time I did the shots, it was glorious. I loved it. Nobody likes shooting themselves with
Sure.
enormous needles, and the pain is there's a lot of discomfort. But there was something so like raw about I can take this huge needle, I could stick it in my belly, and I can control my destiny. Like there's just
Mm,
something really cool about that,
I
you
love
know?
that. Yes.
Yeah. Um,
I love that perspective. I don't think many people share that side of it. And when I hear you saying it, it really resonates with me too. Like finally I'm getting in control of this
yes.
process, you
Yes.
know?
Well, I
Love
will tell
that.
you, it feels very different now going through
Hmm.
infertility than it did when it was fertility preservation.
Hmm.
The feeling state of like, I'm taking control, I am in control, I've got so many options ahead of me. And this is one way I'm grabbing my future life by the reins and taking control over my destiny. That feeling state is very different. Flash forward now that I'm facing some secondary infertility, that it's like the panic of will this happen? Will this happen? Will this happen? So I can see that if you're going through infertility and somebody's saying, isn't it empowering to give yourself injections? You're
Right.
going, no, it is not.
Right.
But at the time for me, the fertility preservation, the egg freezing was very empowering.
I love that. Okay. Well, so spoiler alert, it worked.
Yeah.
You got your first babe. Tell me
Yeah.
so how long was your egg? So you froze eggs and then you decided later to create embryos?
Not even that. So I froze eggs at 35. I still have not used my frozen eggs, which we
Wow.
can talk about.
Yeah.
Um, I then continued dating. I had every manner of misstep and mistake you can imagine. I well, finally sat down with my parents and made a plan. I was like, okay, this is happening. We've got to do it within this time frame. I got their buy-in. Like it was a big family project almost.
How did
Um,
I want to go back. Don't forget this.
yeah.
I want to go back to how they took it, but keep going with this train and then let's go back to that.
Yeah, that's actually very important because my family was unusually supportive. Um, and then I said, okay, within my time frame, I've got like one last hurrah, right? So my last hurrah was a big trip to Peru, in which I was doing a lot of like spiritual connecting to the earth, to myself, and then one last attempt at dating, and and then it was like, let's go. And I had the doctors all lined up, and all that stuff. So what ultimately happened, I'll give you the fertility side and then we'll go to the feeling stuff. What ultimately happened is I was successful with IUI, and we wanted to reserve the eggs, frozen eggs, for future babies. I did. The technical stuff is it was the pandemic. I like finally was like,
Oh,
let's
God.
go, let's
Mhm.
take control of my life. I'm going to be a single mom. I'm so excited about this. And then the pandemic happened and the fertility clinic shut down. And you're like, I finally made this choice. It took years for me to get to the state where I'm comfortable and excited about my future as a solo parent. And now the fertility clinics are closed. What are you talking about? So
Which
I
I think
actually
is
have,
honestly representative of so much of this journey that you think you have control over the timing of it. Some people feel weird about that. Like if it were quote unquote natural, I wouldn't be controlling the timing as much. And now I have an appointment that I have to go in. But what I tell people all the time, and I know you and I have spoken about this, is everything takes longer than you want it to.
yes,
And
yes,
everything happens in a time frame you were not anticipating. So you
yes,
kind of have to either release the expectation in terms of timing, which is much harder to do than just embracing the fact that
yes.
that is part of this process.
And I do want to talk about control at some point. Um, But let me do the technical stuff.
Yes,
Just get that out of the way. We can dive into all the emotion stuff.
perfect.
So this is my favorite part of my story because again, it was this like empowering moment. I had I had the sperm shipped to my house, which they did then because all of a sudden the sperm banks are like, oh, well, what are we gonna do here? So signed a quick waiver. Sperm is shipped to my house, and I did at-home insemination with a friend of mine who's an OBGYN, and we got like real close. We're like, let's, and it is the weirdest thing to get this huge tank. It like comes up to your waist, full of nitrogen, and you have to wear gloves, and it's steaming, and you pull out the teeniest little vial of sperm, and you have to like warm it up in your hands, and it smells so horrible. And it's like, like I've got this like sperm in my kitchen. It's
Oh my
just
God.
so weird. And then, to like strip and have a friend help you get it in there. Needless to say, that did not work.
Mm.
But it is one of my favorite parts of the story because when things get hard, I can go, look, I tried to
I
get
got
myself
naked in my
pregnant.
kitchen with a nitrogen tank and a friend, like
Right.
really, you know?
Right. I could do anything. So if you're listening to this, don't be afraid of the crazy stuff, right? It might be the thing that works. Um, and ultimately the clinics reopened. We did IUI. It was the third IUI. It was the one that was not supposed to work. My doctor called me and was like, I think we mistimed this. It doesn't look like it's going to be successful, but per your insurance, if you do 3 IUIs, you can move on to IVF. So why don't we just do it? Um, and so I got outrageously drunk the night before with friends. This isn't going to work
Perfect.
anyway.
Right.
And it worked. My miracle baby.
Of course.
Yes.
And what, remind me his birthday or
He
around?
he's 2021. He just
Okay.
turned 3 the beginning of
Okay.
August. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about what your experience was like pregnant as a solo mom. And did
Yeah.
people have questions and did they trigger you? What
Yeah.
and were you scared?
Yes. Oh my God, I was scared. Um,
Which, by the way, is not unique to solo moms. It's unique to any pregnant human being. There's so much fear involved, especially when
yeah.
you've worked so hard to get there.
Yeah. And I think, the human thing is to grasp onto some tiny little detail and obsessively
Mm,
panic about that. And the detail that I grasped onto was, how am I going to get myself to the hospital? And it was the detail that was I was imagining this detail well before I even chose to become a solo parent. Like, I'm 36 years old, I've just frozen my eggs, and I'm like, "Well, I can't be a solo parent. I can't get to the hospital by
oh my
myself.
gosh.
Who's gonna drive me?" Like,
Right.
this was the thing that held me back for years. How am I gonna get to the hospital? And it was this representative fear of like, if I can't get my pregnant body to the hospital to deliver, surely I can't take care of a baby. Surely I can't, like, manage the finances on my own. I can't manage the timing and logistics and, like, the life that you have to navigate with a child if I can't even go to the hospital by myself. So that fear was one of those things where you imbue so much meaning, like,
Yeah.
you know, but I was like terrified of that moment of getting to the hospital. And in the end, it was fine. My parents helped me. Um, but in terms of telling people that I was doing it alone, I started telling everyone and I got weird reactions. And so I noticed that if I really just control my circle of communication very tightly, first it was just a couple of girlfriends, a couple missteps where people are like, "What are you doing? That's crazy." And like, "You're too young and you still want a man," all that stuff. I was like, okay, your voices need
Mhm.
to be shut down and not part of my narrative. So then when it came time to get real, I picked a very small community of people. Um, I ended up using 3 of them as my board of advisors to help pick my sperm. And, slowly I would open that circle of trust person by person, but I kept it really tight for a while. And I think that was for me was really important. And because I was so selective with who knew, everyone in that circle was really supportive. So as the circle widened and I'm like, oh, got more and more and more love and support around me, I felt more and more confident, to the point where I could tell anyone, yeah, I'm doing this. It's a sperm donor. And whatever you say to me is irrelevant. It just bounces off of me. I usually get 2 reactions. One is, "But you're so cool," and like, "Surely you could find somebody, like, you seem great." And thank you, I am. So is
Yeah.
anyone else, right? It's
Yeah.
not a lack of ability to find somebody who loves you. It's a different choice. It's a
Sure.
choosing to have a family that looks different. Um, and then the second thing I get is, "You're so brave," or "You're such a badass," or "You're so strong." And I don't think it's that either. I do think that there's some bravery in choosing whatever life it is that you want to choose, and it can be very hard to embrace lifestyles that may appear different. So there's some bravery in that, but I don't think choosing to parent is at all brave, or choosing to do it
Mhm.
by yourself is more or less badass than choosing to parent in any other way. Um, so I think the badass thing, the brave thing is a really interesting comment. I kind of like bristle at it, you know?
I understand that. I understand that. I think it's also resonant within the greater infertility community. Oh my God,
Mhm.
you're so strong. You're so resilient. I can't,
Yes.
how do you keep going? And it's like, we don't have a choice if we want our family, whatever that might mean to each individual
Yes.
person, couple, family. I remember when I was going through it, my husband would say to me all the time, you're just so strong, you're so resilient. And I would get so angry with him
Yes. Yes.
because it's meant, like you're saying, there is a badassness. First of all, it is to parenting
Yeah.
in general. But when
Yes.
someone's talking to you specifically, it feels like it's just to the solo parenting piece because that's your choice and your situation. But
Yeah.
we know as a community, as a society, that parenting is so hard. So to make the choice to bring that into your life and know that it's all going to fall on you, there is a badassness to it. And I get not wanting to hear that all the time, but I also understand what people mean when they say it.
Well, I think you get it this like sense of there's this hidden tone, and it's not, most people don't mean it this way, but there's this hidden tone like, wow, I couldn't do that. But the reason I bristle at that is I know twin moms get that a lot. Wow, you've got twins.
Yeah.
People going through infertility. Wow, you like people who are choosing adoption. Sometimes even people who are choosing not to have kids. Like, wow, I could never choose that. I love my kids so much. Whatever it is. And it's this funny comparison that I think is where the discomfort lies. Like seeing and acknowledging somebody's badassness is always wonderful. Like you're a badass for supporting women on difficult journeys. That's amazing. It's when it starts to be like and I would never do that.
Right.
It gets a little like,
You're
hmm,
crazy for choosing that. And what a
yes,
badass.
yes.
And you're like, well,
Yeah.
the crazy part's coming through. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear that. There's unconscious judgment that's coming with it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Not always. Not always.
Yeah. No, no, not always. So let's go back to how your family handled this news and how did you approach it with them?
I think they knew my family, my parents and I are very close. And I've got two sisters as well. And I think they knew how much I wanted kids and how much I was craving a family. And I think they were witnessing like difficult relationship after difficult relationship. And so very much present at the time that I was doing my egg freezing because I had this like mental breakdown and actually moved home with my parents for what I thought was going to be like a couple weeks and ended up being a full year.
Mm.
Um, in part because I was just in a like a really dark place after that breakup, but in part because I rented out my apartment, which was a great financial decision. And like, there were some other things going on. But so they were very like firsthand witnesses to the egg freezing process. And in fact, my mom and I remember it very differently. I remember it being so empowering. She remembers me being very difficult to live with for those 2 weeks.
I'm sure.
I don't
It's
think I
both. It
was.
can be both. Yes.
Um, and so I think that the early conversation started happening then, like maybe there's another path, maybe there's another path. And it was my parents who ended up pushing me to say, you want kids, what are you going to do about this? And
Mm.
so when I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to do this and here's my time frame, they were like, I think there was a relief, like finally you're choosing what we know is best for you, what we know you want most in life. And that's pretty progressive of them. I think not every family member can be supportive in that way. Um, but at the same time, I think it's so human. Like when you can see your child is suffering and they want something so badly, um, it's hard not to support them, even if it's non-traditional.
Yeah. Did you talk with I would love to hear about some of your
Yeah.
mindset around the donor choice.
Yeah.
This I think holds people up tremendously and I understand
Mhm.
the seriousness of it. So I'm curious how you approached it before you started the process. And then once you
Mhm.
started, did that change what you thought it might be like? Did that change?
Yeah. So one of the easy misnomers that I had, misunderstandings, misperceptions around the donor selection process is that initially you go in thinking you're choosing the same qualities that you're choosing in a partner, right? They have to look a certain way or they have to this or this. And then you realize, wait a minute, I'm never dating this person, never going to meet
Oh,
this
that is
person,
such a
right?
great reframe, like immediately.
Yeah, this is not my person. This is 50% of my child's DNA. So once I could figure that out and took a minute, um, then you're looking for what are the qualities that I want my child to have, and to what extent do I believe those qualities come from nurture versus nature? Um, so things like blue eyes, if that's important to you, or blonde hair, or a certain height, those are historically genetic. But I decided I was looking for things like kindness, intelligence. Um, And I don't know if those are genetic or not, but I said, well, if it's important to me that my child is smart and kind, then like at least I can try to screen for those things. Um, Try screening for smart and kind on things like GPA and essays and things like that. It's very challenging.
Mm.
Um, so that was one element. The other thing that was really oddly creepy is that I think a lot of us are accustomed to the swiping culture
Mm.
when you're just looking through profiles. And so there's some familiarity there, but in this case you're swiping kids' faces. You're looking at little babies like these cherubic, cute, big cheeks and gorgeous eyes and like they're all so precious and you're like this could be my child. So there's something oddly creepy about looking at children that way.
Mhm.
And again, it's not it's in the way of like, will my child have those eyes? Will my child have that nose? Will my child have those lips? Um, so that was weird.
Mhm.
The other thing, and I think I wrote or I did a little Instagram reel about this, and I know that one of our mutual friends wrote a story about this, but what was becoming popular at the time was sperm donor parties, where like you get all your friends together and a big lots of wine and you like party and you celebrate and you go through and you pick your candidate. In the same way that I thought I wanted that. I thought I wanted everyone surrounding me and like, let's have this as a big celebration. And I couldn't actually pull the trigger on that. I thought that was just too raw to have
Mhm.
so many people weigh in on a decision. So I brought in three of my closest friends and particularly those who could be discerning and honest with me. And I went through the list and I picked my top 10 candidates. And then I gave them my login and I said, read all of these 10 profiles and we'll do a Zoom call about it.
Oh my
Again,
God, I
pandemic.
love this. I
Yeah.
love this. This is so
And I
your type A coming
type
through too.
A.
It's like
Right.
perfect.
Yeah. What I asked them to do is see if there's something that I'm not seeing. And so with one candidate that I loved, they're like, everything in his essay is all about me. It's like ego driven. And again, is that nurture versus nature? Who knows? But like, do you really want that? No. Um, or like somebody else seemed really lovely, and then there was something in his essay, that sort of triggered a like, oh my God. So we process of elimination brought it down to the top two candidates, and I bought the sperm that felt the best.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Did you have the choice to buy all of it? Like that donor cannot be with
God, I
anyone
wish.
else?
So
Yeah.
this is where I was really naive, and we could spend a whole podcast episode talking about the donor conception industry, and it is
Yeah.
an industry. But I, whenever I had any money saved, would buy more sperm, thinking I could like reduce the number of siblings my child has by having more of it.
Mm.
Forgetting, of course, that it is one of those resources that is replenishable.
Hmm.
And so while the sperm banks may say we don't have any more of this sperm, they could always
At this
potentially make
moment.
more right
Mhm.
at this moment. They do not, even the best sperm banks, and I think I picked one of the best ones, um, they don't disclose how many families have been pregnant with this or how many families have bought the same sperm. They don't disclose their upper limits. So I don't know if 10 families had access to that sperm or 50 families.
Mm.
Um, they don't just they have no way of knowing if the sperm donor is going to other sperm banks. So the sperm donor could be donating to 10 families at yours and 10 at the next one, 10 at the next one. And so, they have no way of screening for those serial donors who just get this like weird psychological kick out of having
Mm.
thousands of babies. There's been some
Mm.
recent documentaries about that.
Mhm.
And they have no way of screening for ongoing health or mental health issues. So you've got a snapshot in time about their family history as reported by them. And that's it, right?
It's so
That's,
much. It's
yeah,
so much. Do you feel like because I feel like things are changing in that regard because donor conceived people
yeah,
are sharing their stories more and finding out things about themselves that they never thought they would have. Like we've never listened as much as we are now to the voices of the donor conceived people. We've
yeah,
listened to the donor side. Um, and it does feel like there are newer banks opening up with much more clear specifications. It might cost more money, but you pay more money to know that it's only going to be at this bank or whatever the case might be. Do you
yeah.
feel that too, coming from the perspective of somebody that did this?
No, I don't feel like it's happening fast enough. I
Mhm.
appreciate those people who are brave. Here's that word again. I hope I'm
Yeah,
not insulting anyone by using it. Brave enough to use their voices in that way and say, I'm donor conceived, and here's what my experience has been. And there are more and more of those voices, and I greatly value them because as a parent, I need to hear what my kid's going to be feeling in 20 years,
right.
and see if I can parent around that. Um, but I don't feel like legislation or the market is shifting fast enough, and I definitely don't think there's been enough education for parents like me. I came to this information by way of doing the podcast and a deep amount of research,
Mhm.
and still feel like I only know the tip of the iceberg, and as intentional as I am. But at the time that I was selecting my donor, I had no clue, just no clue. And I think that the industry is intentionally obtuse, or makes it really hard for you to gain that information. So I would love for more donor conceived people to have access to information. Love for more parents to have access to information and make better informed choices, and I would love for legislation to regulate this industry in a way that is safe, because we are making children
Right.
here. um, and if anyone's hearing this and wants, advocacy, like, I just think we need more advocacy here.
Mhm.
Not that the people who are working hard are not working hard enough, because they are working tremendously hard. It just is slow to change.
And it's a numbers game. There just aren't
It is.
enough voices out there yet to share. And how do you handle this with your son? Are you talking about it yet?
Hmm.
How do you talk
Yeah,
about it?
he's 3. So the conversations are mostly in the form of picture books, where we're looking at multiple different families and different family structures. And he's very capable of saying, I have a mom. That family has a mom and a dad. I have a mom and a dog, and a grandparent, and, 2 grandparents. And, so that's where I'm equipping his language. I haven't yet taught him about sperm donors,
Sure.
because it's awkward to say the word sperm. So we're talking
Right.
about, like, there was a special person who gave a gift, but that's the next phase for us. It is
Mhm.
very critical to bring it into the conversation early and often.
Mhm.
Um, and it's critical to make sure that, if we're in the playground and somebody says, does he have a dad? Is it nope? He
Mhm.
was conceived using a sperm donor, and just
And it's
not
normalized.
exactly
Yeah.
normalize it, no shame.
Yeah.
Um, We've had a couple incidences with, like, a couple of nannies on the playground said something to my babysitter once. And at one point, my son was having a little issue with one of the male teachers at school. Um, and the comments that my babysitter fed to me was that some of the parents were saying, well, it's because he doesn't have enough exposure to men.
Oh
And it
God.
had nothing to do with that.
Of course.
So, there's always going to be that. But for me to help him combat it, we have to be as transparent as possible.
And here we find you in a different situation right now, as you are
Yes.
experiencing, as you alluded to, secondary infertility, because you do want your second and you're not having the same easy IUI experience. So, you and I have been
Yeah.
able to talk about this a little bit, but what does it feel like to go through secondary infertility as a solo mom by choice with a child at home? What does that feel like for you?
Um, well, it's unusually, like, awkward, I think. One of the things that wasn't really aware of, because my clinic does later blood work. So I can drop him off at school and then run to the clinic and get blood work and just show up to work late, which is its own challenge,
Mhm.
juggling work and kids and stuff. But a friend of mine, her clinic that I almost switched to, only does early morning blood work. And so I realize now that my choice of clinics is limited, because otherwise, how am I going to get 6 a.m. childcare?
Yeah,
You know? Um,
so true.
like, little things like that. And my clinic doesn't allow kids in the clinic because it's triggering. And
Mhm.
so, if, for instance, I don't have childcare that day, at a babysitter, a friend, or somebody, weekends can be especially tough. Like,
Yeah.
driving him to a friend's house, leaving him there, and then getting myself to the clinic and back. I'm relying on so much goodwill from other people.
Mhm.
And until you go through fertility treatments, you don't realize how many doctor's appointments there are.
Yeah.
It can, and the inconsistency of them. You don't know. For instance, I'm going to the doctor on Wednesday. I don't know any other doctor appointments that are coming up the following week until they get the blood work and they say, we should come back Thursday. You
Right.
should come back Friday. Like, it's
Then you have
so
to
this
scramble to get the coverage and the care and the
exactly,
schedule. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
A
Um,
lot.
that part is really tricky. The other thing is, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. But the same community of people that was tremendously supportive of me having a family is not as supportive of me having a second.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
get it, but there's
Yes.
this sense of like, oh gosh, you're being so selfish.
So unfair. It's so
It's
unfair and so
it's
common.
it's weird. It's like, why is one child brave? Why is
Right.
one child badass? Why is one child, you get it? Like, we will support you. We love you. And two is like, now you're just asking for too
Mm,
much. Like,
it's
who are you to
such a
think
good
that you
point.
deserve that? You know?
Yeah.
Um, I've been really struggling with that, including my parents who just don't understand. You've got
Mm,
one, he's wonderful. Why are you begging trouble? You
mm,
know?
mm. And we say this all the time here, and you're entitled to whatever family you want and whatever it
Yeah.
looks like. And just because you pivoted what the traditional norms might be doesn't mean you don't get that dream still.
Right. Yeah.
That's
It's
a
funny.
lot.
Like I have spent a number of years through my podcast and my newsletter and other things combating this sense of exactly what you said. What kind of family structures are acceptable? And the one I just never thought about is the number of children you have. There's a lot of everyone has opinions about that, you know.
Right.
Some of my friends have 4. People, oh, that's too much, and
Right.
some have 1. Oh, it's not enough. Like, where does everyone get an opinion about this?
Absolutely. And
Um,
I've seen people go through infertility for their third, and it gets more complicated the further you go.
right,
Right. The secondary is one thing, tertiary is quite another. And
right.
they had no issues. I've seen where no issues with the first two, and then they go through it for the third, and people are like, why would you go through all of this? You have to.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
It's really complicated.
You should be happy with the life you have.
Yeah.
Why aren't you satisfied?
Right.
Is you
Right.
know,
And it
uh,
has nothing to do with that. You are happy with the life you have, and
right,
you're entitled to whatever life you want to live in any way,
right.
shape, or form. If you all of a sudden switched careers and were successful there, no one would be like, why on earth would you do that? You were happy in your career, you know?
I was exactly going to use that example,
Yeah.
right? Like, um, or moved towns. Oh, it's selfish to move from one town to the
Right.
next. Well,
Right.
I
You had
see
everything
myself
you
over
needed in
here.
that town. So what do you, right?
Exactly.
It's like it's crazy. Well, let's talk
Exactly.
briefly about your Stork'd community, which is a
Yeah.
wonderful community. Do you feel, is this the same group maybe that has these complicated feelings? And let's talk about how you really, because you've created such a beautiful Stork'd community, how did you work to create that?
Yeah, so Storked, my podcast and related newsletter started because I wanted to explore what my family should look like. And as I was thinking about solo parenting, that was the primary thing in my mind. But there were other things like I was dating people who are divorced. What does blending a family look like? Can I just be a stepmom? And look at me using the word just.
Just.
You can hear my
Right.
my bias about
Yeah.
what I wanted.
Yes.
Um, can I choose not to have kids at all? How do I feel about adoption? How do I feel about fostering? So all of those were things that I was exploring. And because they were so rich and interesting, I decided to record them. And it was really more of a personal exploration. And in the personal exploration, I discovered that we all have this specific vision about what a family looks like. And the reality is that most of our families look nothing like that, whether the shape of them or how they came to be. The shape of them, the way we're told they should go is, you try 2 or 3 times and you get pregnant immediately and 2.5 kids with a male partner. And the reality is that our partners come in all genders, are or not at all.
Right.
We may not want kids, and that there's all these taboos. I may have faced some taboos about solo parenting, but the people who choose not to have kids often face taboos. And the other thing I found really interesting is that in our current social media environment, we're told to have a very specific narrative. You should talk only about solo parenting. You should talk only about infertility. You should talk only about whatever. But none of us go through this and say, this is my family. Boom, done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I've chosen solo parenting, but like dipped my toe in the dating world. What
Right.
happens if I meet somebody? Then I might be blending a family. I know many people who have chosen a traditional path and gotten married, and then they lose a partner or they get divorced or they find themselves otherwise solo parenting. So how do you navigate divorce? How do you navigate surprise solo parenting? Not by choice.
Right.
Right. And so if we just say, okay, one and done with our family lives, um, it doesn't tell the whole truth and it doesn't represent who we are as complex beings.
Such a good point. It goes back to people needing to categorize and
Yes.
make things black and white when we all live in the gray, so much
Yes.
gray. This conversation is so good. I thank you for doing it. In closing, I love to ask people if there's one bit of advice or a cliche or a saying that you think about often from time to time that you might want to leave people with.
The thing that I hold on to, and this is the bravery, and this is the most difficult thing in the world, is finding your own truth. That's the hard part. Everything else is easier when you can hold on to your own truth. And if your truth is, I want to fight for a family, and if that means going through rounds of infertility treatment, great. If that means I'm going to do this unpartnered and I'm very happy without a partnership, great. If it means I am willing to do it unpartnered, but I really want a partner in my life, so I'm going to invest in dating, phenomenal. And I think it can be so hard to find what is the North Star of our family lives, the things that really drive us. But if you can find that, the rest will unfold.
I love that. Julia, thank you so much for being here. We will, of course, link out to your beautiful community and podcast. And I just adore you. And let's do these catch ups more often.
Ah, for sure. I appreciate it.